everyone, welcome back to Coco's Well. I have been wanting to share Edison's birth story with you all for so long, 8 months to be exact, and I actually wrote about it on my blog already, but I've been wanting to tell you guys in person. So if watching videos isn't your thing, you can definitely head on over to my blog and check that out over there. There's pictures and the full story, probably in better detail than I will be able to get into on this video. But let's just jump in. So Edison was born exactly on his due date, September 9th, and I had thought he was going to come a lot sooner than that. Starting at about 36 weeks, I had been waking up in the middle of the night feeling contractions, and every night I thought I was going to go into labor, and every morning I woke up feeling totally normal. I actually had my mom come to our house. She lives about 2 hours away. I had her come 2 times telling her I was going to have a baby. And she came and hung out for like 3 days and then just had to leave because nothing was happening. It was really discouraging, really frustrating that I didn't know what was happening with my body. I felt like my body was going into labor, but it wasn't. So when I reached 40 weeks, I was kind of a mess. I was crying every day. Just if you've had a baby before and you've been super pregnant, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I was very emotional and ready to give birth in every way. So at exactly 40 weeks, I had an appointment with my midwives. If you don't already know, I was planning a home birth, and they texted me in the morning saying, we're going to have to delay your appointment because another mom is having her baby right now. And something about that just like really upset me. I felt like I should be the one having the baby. So my mom was visiting us. She was with us. I told my mom I needed some time, and I like took a drive, and I just cried in my car and felt pathetic for myself and upset. But by 2 o'clock, they texted me and said, okay, can you see us at 3:30? The baby was born and we're ready to meet with you. So David and I went to the midwife appointment at 3:30 that day. And when I walked in, I was upset. I had to go do like the urine sample, so David tried to fill them in that I was just like falling apart and a total mess. And so I went in, and Marlene, one of my midwives, asked if I wanted to do a cervical exam. And typically, like I would, knowing better, would just say no, but I wanted to know that my body was progressing because I felt like I had been in false labor for 4 weeks, which was driving me crazy. So I agreed to a cervical exam. And when she checked me, she looked up at me with big eyes, and she was like, you're more like 5 centimeters dilated, which if you know anything about birth, 5 centimeters dilated is halfway. So I was very slowly, like I thought, in labor just over a 4-week period of time. And the baby, she looked at me and said, this baby is coming. You guys go home. You can set up your birth tub. And David totally didn't believe it. He was like, whoa, don't give her false hope. She's kind of losing her mind. But our midwife was fairly certain that we were going to be having a baby that day, maybe the next. So we went home. We were excited, but nothing was happening. But about, I'd say an hour later, I started feeling slow and somewhat steady contractions. I didn't want to tell David. I didn't want to tell anybody. I was afraid that it was fake labor because I had been having fake labor for so long. And then about 30 minutes later, I went outside to the porch. David and Henry were playing outside, and I kept having contractions. They were mild, but I could definitely feel them. And I said, David, call your mom and tell her to come get Henry. And so he immediately got my mother-in-law, Pauline, on the phone, and she agreed to come over, or he started talking to her. Before he actually got any words out, I was like, David, hang up. I'm not in labor. And so he like had to fake out Pauline and be like, sorry, Mom, I don't know why I called, bye. And then hung up. And then 10 minutes later, I was laying on the couch in our house, and Henry came over and started like poking me in the eye during a contraction. And that's when I totally flipped out. It was like more than I could handle because I was trying to totally relax my body, and having a toddler poking me I couldn't handle it. So that I told David, I was like, I'm really in labor and your mom needs to come over and take Henry. And so that must have been around 5:30. September 9th, and we think the baby's coming soon. And so Pauline came over. She lived about 20 minutes away. So by 6 o'clock, Henry was out the door. And I texted the midwives at that point. I said, I think I'm having contractions, and I think they're every 3 minutes apart, because I was sort of having David time by that point. But I'm not ready for you to come. And the midwives texted me back and they said, wow, 3 minutes apart is really close together. Can you talk through them? Are they making you uncomfortable? And I texted them back. No, I couldn't text them back. I'm sorry. I told David, I was like, I can't bother with this, because I was really so in labor. And so I told David to text them back that I didn't want them to come over because I was afraid that it wasn't time yet. And I didn't want to have people fussing around me if I wasn't really going to have a baby anytime soon. And then I think maybe it was like 10 minutes later, I started feeling like really pushy pressure. And then I think at that point it clicked that I needed some help and I was about to have a baby. And so he called them, and luckily our midwives live super close by. So I think within about 20 minutes they were over, and David was trying to set up the birth tub at that point, because when we got home we decided not to, because we just didn't really think the baby was going to come. And so he was running all over, but I was needing help during contractions. So every contraction would come and he would come behind me, and I would just like totally go limp so that I could relax during the contraction, because I didn't like sitting, but I wanted to stand and be like a limp dead fish. And so David was setting up the birth tub, and then I would call for him when a contraction would start. And I have some footage of that. I really, really wanted to film the birth, and it all happened so much faster than I expected that I did get the tripod set up. I did get the camera set up in the living room. Unfortunately, the baby was born in our bedroom. So there was a lot of footage of people walking in and out of our living room, but hopefully, if I have another baby, I will catch that on video. I think it would be really cool to have just for myself. But anyway, so David was getting the birth tub set up. We had a little fluke with the birth tub. The water in our hot water heater came out too hot, and the water came out bright orange, like Kool-Aid orange, because it melted the pipe of the hose. And so I heard all this chaos happening in our bedroom, and they were going to try and empty the tub and then refill it, but they were worried that the hose was going to like leak again, and it was going to be like toxic water because there was orange dye going into it from the hose. And so at some point I just walked into the bedroom and I was like, just get rid of the tub. I don't want the tub. Like, we're having a baby. So that was probably around 7:30 that I started feeling like I've got to push a baby out. You guys better figure out what you're going to do. And so the midwives started putting like Chuck's pads like all over the floor, because birth is pretty messy and we have carpet in our room. And so they got the floor covered. I think they put like a giant tablecloth that was waterproof on the floor. And the midwife checked me because I was pushing, and she wanted to make sure that I was complete. With Henry, I had a cervical lip, which means like your cervix opens, but like a little piece didn't completely open. So I was a full 10 with a lip. With Edison, again, I was a full 10 with a little bit of a cervical lip, which means like you can't push past it. The only way that you can push past it is to wait for it to completely open up on its own, which means you just go through contractions until it pulls away on its own. Or the midwife offered to hold the lip open while I pushed, which meant she had to have her hand shoved up me and push. I tried that one time and I was like, get out, like this isn't happening. Like, it was so painful. And I told her it was definitely the worst part of labor, because in terms of the contractions, like I felt like they were so manageable. I couldn't believe that I was going to have a baby with the discomfort I had. It was really minimal. Like, the contraction would end, I would talk to everybody. Like, it was so different than my first labor, where I felt like I was just completely out of it because I was so overtaken by labor. This labor was just really manageable. And so I told her, I was like, I just want to keep laboring. I'm not ready. Like, I'm not ready to push the baby out. So from like 7:30 to 8:30, I was fully ready to push the baby out besides the cervical lip. And we just sort of waited. I would have a contraction. And then finally, I think it was at like 8:15 that I was complete, and my water hadn't broken yet. And so the midwife, again, earlier I forgot to mention this, offered to break my water and said that if she broke my water, the baby would be out in like 10 minutes. And that was probably like 7:30, because if the water broke, everything would just be clear and the baby could come out. And I said no, I didn't want her to do that. And so at around 8:15, I pushed, and my water just like totally ruptured. It was insane. Like, because my water had broken before labor started with Henry, I didn't realize like the amount of pressure you could have in your body. Like, I felt like I was a balloon exploding, and everybody in the room, like, it made a noise. Like, it was just like fireworks, intense. So at this point, I'm ready to push the baby out, and I had been laboring mostly. I had a birth ball, and I had been having contractions just like laying over the birth ball, and that had worked really well. So we're just like on the floor in our bedroom, and David had just sort of been like giving light pressure to my back. Again, with Henry's labor, it had excruciating back labor it was just really intense. And this labor was just nothing like it. It just was so mild. So he just had light pressure going on my back that I was asking for, and I was just breathing through contractions. And but then when it was time to push, somehow I ended up like in the sitting position, and I just like could not figure out how I was going to get a baby out in that position. And I think that's one of the cool things about labor. When you are allowed to just labor the way that you want to, you can figure out that like a baby's not going to come out in a certain position and that you need to move. And so I told the midwives, I was like, this ain't happening. Like, I've got to get in a different position. Like, what can I do? Because I didn't quite know what to do. And so they told me to get like on all fours, and it was just perfect. I could leverage enough that within a couple pushes, he was out. And we have some really awesome pictures. I don't know that I'll show them to you because they're quite graphic, but of David just like reaching for Edison's head. He's just like totally in the action, which I love that about him. He wasn't like intimidated by the whole thing at all. So David got to kind of catch him, and then he came through my legs and like down to the ground through my legs, and I got to be the first one to pick him up. And he was so cute. He was like started screaming his head off right away. He was much louder than Henry ever was from the start, but he was just so sweet. He was covered in vernix, which I had had a water birth with Henry, and so you don't quite get to experience like all the, sounds weird, but like all the sights and smells and gooiness of a baby being born when they're born in the water. It sort of washes it away. But the vernix was just like thick on his body, and I don't know, something really cool and beautiful about the whole thing, getting to just see him so raw and so new. And I don't know, it was beautiful. And so I picked him up onto my chest, and I think we tried to nurse him then, but I don't think that he latched then. It was kind of a little weird to be on the floor on my bedroom. Like, it wasn't quite like I needed to move. And so he was born, we were holding him, and we just kind of immediately, I think the midwives helped us onto the bed. So I got him on the bed, and that's when he nursed for the first time. And he was beautiful. He was perfect. It's such a relief. I know the moms watching, like, you carry a baby for 9 months, and you worry about, or 10 months, you worry about them. You worry about their toes and their fingers, and all their body parts. Are they working right? Are they put together right? And then just to see them and have them there and get to meet them, it was just incredible. And after, with the labor being so calm and so not intense, I feel like I got to experience that moment of being with him so much more Then with Henry, which it's okay, I think Henry's birth was what it was. It was my first birth and I'd never done it before. And so there's something so beautiful about that. I remember feeling like so proud of myself that I did it with Henry's birth, but with Edison's birth, I just got to like be there and hold him and experience him. And I don't know, it wasn't so much about me and the labor, but like that here he was, and getting to meet him and knowing that he had been inside me, and it made everything so worth it. Henry got to come and meet his brother for the first time, which was so sweet. It was such a great time for Edison to be born. It was 8:30. It wasn't like super late. We got to just like snuggle in bed with our new baby, and Henry got to come and see him, and then Henry went off to bed. It was beautiful. It was one of the best nights of my life. So, do you guys have any questions about my natural home birth? I would love to hear them in the comments below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and if you want to catch more details about the birth and you're curious about more specific times of when I started labor, when he was born, you can go check out my blog. There'll be more pictures over there as well. You guys can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram.